Could women contribute in the fight against corruption? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to another edition of the program, The Woman. On to today's edition, focus will be on women's contribution in the fight against corruption. And as guest on the show today is Mrs. Beatrice Fri Bime. She is the project manager of Beatrice Coalition against corruption. We'll be meeting our guest after the break. You're welcome back. On to today's edition, focus will be on women's contribution in the fight against corruption. And as guest in the show today is Mrs. Beatrice Fri Bime. She is the project manager for the Business Coalition against corruption. You're welcome, Ma, to the program.
Thank you, Ruth, for inviting me.
Yes. Can you tell us who is Mrs. Beatrice Fri Bime?
Beatrice Fri Bime, I am a woman, a mother, I am a writer, I am a professional.
Okay.
And currently I work for the Business Coalition Against Corruption, which is a private sector initiative for the fight against corruption, and the whole idea is to accompany the government of Cameroon in its fight against corruption, to make the business environment in Cameroon corruption-free, so we would be able to attract more investors into the country, and so lead it to development.
Okay. Being the project manager for the Business Coalition Against Corruption, what did you study before getting there?
Oh, okay. I have a master's in business administration in international business. I studied in the United States of America. I first of all started in Peninsula College, which is in Washington State. Then I went to Wisconsin, did my first degree in University of Green Bay, and then my master's in University of Green Bay, Whitewater, in University of Wisconsin, Whitewater.
Yeah.
And so I came back home. I have worked with the government. I have worked with United Nations, and in different fields, and now I'm helping the private sector to fight against corruption.
Yes, you talked about working with the government. How did you begin your professional
career? Okay, I worked with the Ministry of Trade and Industrial Development. And of course, you know that no country can develop without developmental structures. And so in those days, what I did, first of all, I came in as a card, and I work with the cabinet to identify what the different strategies were, the economic trends, and then, write reports. We had documents coming from, at the time, the parastatals and other structures that were under the ministry. And then, of course, we give information, prepare the minister for meeting the press, and so lead the country towards development. So after that, as a wife and a mother, I followed my husband to Tanzania, lost him, came back and worked with the Peace Corps, worked with the ILO, then worked with WHO and the Global Fund, and then came back to Cameroon. I've been doing consultancy with GTZ, now with the BCSE.
Okay, so how was it working with the United Nations, working with these different agencies of the United Nations, and what was the position that you occupied and the duties that you had to carry?
Okay, working with the ILO nationally, I was the national coordinator for the fight against child labor. And at the time that we started in 2002, the notion of child labor in Cameroon was typical denial. No, there was no child labor in Cameroon. We didn't even know what the difference was between child labor and child work in terms of training children. And so we had the odd task to actually create awareness raising, educate people about the difference between child labor and normal work that children have to do in order to grow up. And we did that to the point where first the government started with denial, and then we had to go to the National Assembly, to the Prime Minister, and today we have they've enacted an act against not only child labor but child trafficking and persons in trafficking. And I think that is the work that ILO started, the government took over, and they're doing a beautiful job, because right now there are lots of civil society organizations fighting against trafficking in persons. You hear about our girls in Asia. That work would never have come to the forefront without what we did.
Okay, so you just spoke there about child labor and child work. Okay, so can you give us the difference between child labor and child work?
Sure. Every child needs to be educated to come out to be a responsible adult. And in order to do so, the child needs to be able to start at home to learn how to clean the house, wash dishes, wash their clothes. But when we talk about child labor, what we mean is, one, the age of the child in relationship to what the child is asked to do, the number of hours that child spends doing those things. Is the child going to school or not? All of those things come together for us to be able to define whether it is child labor or just the normal work that children have to do. So it took a lot of time for people to, first of all, understand that and know that, yes, even parents, child labor can happen not only with the girls that we bring in our houses, but even with our own children. If a parent who has a cocoa farm, for example, takes a child to go and spray fertilizer, which is harmful to that child's age, because when you breathe in the chemicals, they affect your lungs, and the long-term effects of that, most people were not aware of it. Or the fact that when the child goes to the farm, you can hurt yourself with the cutlass. There are other dangers like snakes and everything. So all of that we had to, go around educating people.
Okay, after the education and leaving that field with what NGOs are doing today, do you think, parents and the population are educated enough in terms of child labor?
When we started with child labor, actually, the thing that was so good about the ILO, IPEC projects was the fact that we not only identify the problem, we not only identify the children, but that we actually help them to create income-generating activities, so that when you withdraw them from the labor, the children will have something to do, and then they went back and were able to provide like uniforms, everything to enable them go back to school. And we worked in collaboration with UNICEF and FAO. So there was a part of where, food could be given to children who didn't have food to eat. And because there is an enacted law, whether it's implemented correctly or wrongly, at least more people are aware. Many NGOs are going around telling your children education is better than work. What the child can bring at an early age is not equal to what the child will bring when they are grown up and educated.
Okay. Being the project manager of the Business Coalition Against Corruption, why did you decide such a venture? Why did you, what inspired you?
I didn't decide against it. My involvement with the Business Coalition Against Corruption is, I don't know whether to call it fate, because I was working somewhere else when this initiative started. And it went round. They've had 2 coordinators before me. And so when it became open for me, I was like, wow. First of all, this is something that I've talked about in my book, because I believe that we in Cameroon, we in Africa, we need a mental revolution. And a mental revolution is part of what we need in order to develop. We are such a rich country. We are such a rich continent. So we cannot have so much, and yet we are the least developed continent in the whole world. And so when you look at corruption, what is corruption? Corruption defined so that even anybody can understand is the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. We usually think that it means just bribery. No, there's a lot to do with it. So when you look at it from time immemorial, that's from when human beings were, from the time of Dante, from even in the Bible, you will see that corruption is one of the greatest deterrents to development. It is worse than HIV/AIDS, it's worse than malaria, it's worse than tuberculosis. So we cannot say, the Emergence 2035 is the African Union deadline. And we in Cameroon cannot say that we are going to emerge in 2035 if we do not deal with corruption. It's not going to happen.
Okay, so what's the difference between bribery and corruption?
Okay, bribery is where somebody brings, say, finances, financial gain, and gives somebody for a favor, which either they merit or they not, but they will tell you that it's to facilitate what they're supposed to get. Okay, that's bribery. And we always think that corruption is only bribery. It's not. There is nepotism. This is a private TV station, right? You are Anglophone, and the person who owns this TV station is not Anglophone. If he did not hire you on merit and looked for just people who are either related to the wife, friends, then you would not be getting merit. You will be getting what they call nepotism. That is part of corruption. When you misuse your position, if for private gain, it doesn't only have to be financial, it is corruption. When there is fraud, it is corruption. When there is bad governance, it is corruption. All of those are what we mean by corruption. That's why if you look at the activities that we've been carrying out, on the 25th of April this year, we had an activity in Douala, and the theme was promoting good governance in the private sector. And let me go ahead and tell you something else that I like about the Business Coalition Against Corruption. We are not preaching to other people. For you to become a member, you first of all have to be correct. That is, you adhere to the principles, to the vision, to the mission, and then you yourself are practicing what we preach, what you say you are doing. So you have got to pay your taxes. You cannot say you are fighting corruption and then you are not on par with your taxes. So all businesses that are members of the BCAC, they know all of this and they adhere to it.
So why the establishment of such a structure?
Okay. If you look at my card, I've written behind it, corruption, you are no counts. Corruption is not something that can be stopped by a decree. The head of state, first of all, when we look at the history of corruption in Cameroon, when Transparency International said Cameroon was the most corrupt country in the world 2 years consecutively, the thing was no, denial. We always deny first. We don't even take a step back to say, why would they say Cameroon is the most corrupt country? We don't look at that. It was denial. From denial now, it was yes, there is corruption going on. And so what happened? The head of state decided to create structures, put in place structures that will stop corruption. There's CONAC, there's CONSUB, there is ANIF, there are many structures. However, it is not that decree that would stop corruption. Every single individual in this country, from the little child in the primary school to the head of state himself, has to put their hands together to be able to stop corruption. So government has done its part by creating the structures. Now the private sector, the private sector is the greatest engine of growth. They work in an environment where if there is corruption, of course, profits are down. Cost of doing business would increase. The length of time that you need to take to create a business would be lengthened, and so a lot of problems arise. So in order to accompany the government of Cameroon in the fight against corruption, business companies, members of the Business Council for Africa, came together and said, okay, the government is doing its part, we have to also help to do our part. That's why there's also civil society working. And there is you and there's everybody else who is listening that has to join together in this fight against corruption.
So how does the coalition work? What are some of the activities of this coalition?
Okay, the Business Coalition Against Corruption, first of all, we recruit members from the private sector and now from the civil society. It's governed by a board of management, which we call, in other terms, the steering committee. And that steering committee is made of major members who are active. It's made up of some of the diplomatic corps. And the reason the diplomatic corps is into the Business Coalition Against Corruption is because most other countries, international governments, have anti-corruption and anti-bribery acts. So when the companies from those countries come to Cameroon, they need to adhere not only to the anti-bribery and corruption acts of their countries, but they need to respect the anti-corruption acts in Cameroon and, of course, in Africa. So diplomatic corps is there to help, first of all, encourage their companies to become members of the Business Coalition Against Corruption, and then give us guidance. And so the Business Coalition Against Corruption has members that are multinationals, they have small and medium-sized enterprises, they have individuals, they have people who are interested in the fight against corruption to clean the business environment of Cameroon. If you are interested, all you need to do, look at the mission, look at the vision, sign on the adhesion form and say, okay, I'm a personal business person, but these are my ethics, this is my code of ethics. So you ask what we do.
Okay. So what does it take to become a member of this coalition?
Okay, you have to adhere to the vision. You have to be like, yes, we don't want, we have, zero tolerance for corruption in your business. When you do that, then when we provide you with training, because most businesses exist without a code of ethics. And code of ethics are not the same for every sector. And so what we do is we have 3 types of trainings that we give. We give a generalized training that anybody can, come to, and from that training, it would help you to put in place a code of ethics. Once you've put and before you even put that code of ethics, we have a reservoir or a bank of experts who have done ethics, compliance, and so they will help you in coaching you on how to come to, you write that code of ethics, which is probably either industry specific or your business specific. And after you've written it, we help to also, from our data bank, provide you with somebody who would help you in implementation. So writing it is one thing, getting the staff to know it and adhere to it is another thing. So all of that is a process that when you are a member of the Business Coalition Against Corruption, we help you to do that.
Yeah, you just spoke there about training. How is this training done, and the criteria for choosing those who are to take part in the training?
Okay. Like I said, you don't have, our trainings are offered to anybody who is interested in training.
Which means I can decide to be trained and...
You can decide to be trained, but as a journalist, we've had 3 trainings. We've trained journalists in Douala, in Yaoundé, and in Bamenda. But our training, generalized training, we either, just say we want to train on a anti-corruption subject, and we put out the message, and then people apply, and we get the number that we want, and then we'll do the training.
And for how long is this training?
Well, business people, most of them don't want to be out of their business for more than a day. So if it's a generalized training, it's usually a day. If it is a specific training for either an organization or for an industry, it would depend on what their needs are. So we can have it for 2 days, like we did it with Vodafone in Douala. We did for 2 days. With other companies, we do for 1 day. So it depends. We identify what your need is. We start from zero. Our experts actually start from zero. They identify what your needs are. where corruption can take place in your organization. You see, where corruption can take place in a hotel is not the same as in a bank. In a bank, it's different. So with the banking sector, we tailor-made their training to them. And with the journalists, what do we expect from you? Journalists have a code of ethics worldwide. We expect you to keep to that code of ethics here. And so our training sort of remind you what the code is, remind you, help you how to put in place one for your institution and how to work with the rest of the public, and always seek the truth.
So the Business Coalition has been working with other organizations and structures. So how has the collaboration been so far?
Extremely good. We work with CONAC. You know, that is the government entity to fight against corruption. And so we actually don't do anything without inviting CONAC. CONAC is a member of the board of the BCAC. Transparency International is a member of the board of the BCAC. We invite CONSUP, we have ANIF, we have GICAM, we have GIFAC, we have ECAM. All of those people we collaborate with.
Okay, so far, what has been your achievements? What has been the achievements of the coalition?
Okay, we started with the members who were the members of the Business Council for Africa, and the number of members has grown to over 150 active. We've had more than that before, but some people are not active. And it's not everybody who needs to pay. We have paying members and members who actually pay to be able to support the coalition and the activities. And we have members who come in because they like what we are doing and they want to be part of it.
Okay. Finding out from the population what they think, whether or not women could contribute in the fight against corruption, this is what they had to say. Let's watch.
Yes, women can help reduce corruption in Cameroon because women, they know good management, as we know, and they don't overuse finances. Even if you give them money to manage at home, at the end of the week you ask them some money, they can still give you back some. So I think women are good managers, and if we put them in good positions, they can help to reduce corruption.
Well, in my opinion, I think that they can help. They can actually help a good deal, because it is believed that women are more disciplined. They don't have that big tendency of distracting funds, of distracting money, and that's why I believe in most of companies they are appointed to run finance or accounting departments, because they believe that they actually have that ability, they are more disciplined, they are more rigorous, and so on. And on that basis, I think they can actually, help eradicate corruption. They have that maternal tendency, that feeling of actually taking things like the family things. So they will not actually accept, money to be distracted or to be mismanaged. So I really believe they can actually help a good deal.
Quelle que soit la responsabilité qu'on confie à une femme, la femme le fait avec amour. Elle le fait avec beaucoup d'engagement et avec plaisir. Nous avons des exemples tels le Rwanda. Au Rwanda, le président Kagame, j'avais été le voir, il m'a reçu. Et la petite étude que j'ai faite au Rwanda, il y a au moins 55% de femmes, aussi bien dans l'administration publique que dans le parapublic.
On dit ce que femme veut, Dieu le veut. Je pense très sincèrement que oui. Très sincèrement que oui, parce que la femme, c'est une éducatrice à la base. À la maison, c'est elle qui éduque les enfants, c'est elle qui tient leur rôle du manager. Donc c'est elle qui donne ce qu'on appelle la base même de l'homme qui va évoluer demain dans la société. Alors, je peux vous prendre pourquoi je le dis. Ça ne veut pas dire que l'homme ne peut pas éduquer les enfants, mais la femme étant la mère porteuse de l'homme, hein, dans l'absolu, la femme, c'est la base, quoi qu'on dise.
Women can and Madam Beatrice Fri, from what you just saw there, what can you say? Because most of those who spoke there, they like stress that women are educators. So do you buy their opinion?
Oh, certainly. I am one person who believes that women can do everything they set their hearts to and do it even better. With the fight against corruption, like one of the persons interviewed said, women actually begin educating children from infancy. They give birth to the children, their moral upbringing is done by women, and I like to quote something. In most of the developed countries, women play a very big role. If we look at South Africa, 45% of women in parliament. Rwanda, they say, okay, it's because of the genocide, fine. But because 56% of the women are in parliament, the country is thriving. You go to Angola, go to anywhere else, you see that where women are, where women actually participate in decision making, they participate as nurturers. They participate as good managers. You give a woman whatever you give, she'll bring you something out of it. So yes, they can not only fight against corruption, they should be, be involved in the fight against corruption. When you are married or you are single, you know what your husband makes. If you know that your husband makes 400,000 francs a month, and you people are staying in a house that costs maybe 150 or 200, and at the end of the year, that man offers you a car that he bought for 5 million francs, excuse me, find out from him where is that money coming from. If you are a girlfriend, if you are a mother, and you see that your son is spending, or your daughter, because everybody, when we say corruption, it's not just men. Everybody else is spending more than they are earning. You have to find out where the extra money is coming from. So yes, women need to be involved, and they are and can be better managers and the people to propel the fight against corruption and take it to its logical end. If the man brought you a diamond ring and you said, hey, I don't think, how did you afford this? And you say no, he won't do that the next time. Because the truth is that men or women, we do, everything that we do is because we're in a society. We need to influence one another. We need to attract one another. And so,
your involvement in the fight against corruption as a woman, I think it hasn't been easy. So what are some of the challenges that you faced?
Well, right now, some of the challenges we are facing are due to the fact that people have the perception that corruption is so embedded in the fabric of our society that it's a joke to say that we can actually end it. But I differ with them. This is a fight that we have started. It is a journey that we have taken. We might start with baby steps, but frankly speaking, I'm not even expecting that it is going to take long. I think within my lifetime and within or before 2035, that this country would be corruption free.
Do you have the necessary arms to fight against corruption?
Yes and no. We are already creating awareness raising. There are already tools in place for people to denounce. Transparency International has a hotline. CONAC has a hotline. Organizations have ways in which you can denounce corruption, because corruption It's a crime. It's not only that it's a crime. Corruption does not like noise. And so where there is noise in terms of corruption, people would be shy. So when you denounce corruption, corruption stops. When there is noise, corruption will stop. So hey, we're making it, and I think that before long, we're going to get to somewhere where we would say corruption has been curbed. Because to say it would end is a difficult task, because where there are human beings, you would always find one or two people who think that they are smarter than the others, and so they can continue to be corrupt and that they will not be caught. We need, again, I think some of the challenges are the fact that we need political will. There's been political will through decrees, but in Ghana, for example, it's the head of state who went to the customs department to say, hey, you guys are corrupt and I want it to stop. In Nigeria, I can name, I don't want to name countries that are not African, because they will say you are naming European countries, everybody is corrupt. No, we need not only the decree, we need to walk the walk and talk the talk right here.
So are you certain women can succeed in this fight where men have failed?
Certainly. That's why we have, one of the first things that I did when I became the project manager is to get GFAC on board. You know, as a businesswoman, you not only have to fight the fact that, one, you are a woman, two, you don't have the normal resources to do the business, you might borrow money, the money gets hold up because you want to pay, and then there is a man sitting at some table, and the man not only wants to delay your payments, but wants you to give, in addition to the services that you're rendering, probably sleep with you. Women have to learn to say no to all of that. This is a business I'm doing. I'm not going to give you any kickback, and I want the business done. If I want it on merit, give it to me, I execute it. And with being members of the coalition and talking about good governance, they also learn how to do that.
Okay, let's now talk about Mrs. Beatrice Fri Bime, the author. You're also an author, and you've written, I think, 3 books.
Yeah.
So,
I think I've written all my life, and I've read all my life. Since I knew how to read and write, I read anything. If I pick a piece of paper on the street that there's something one can read on it, I'll read it. So yes, the first book that I wrote was called Mystique, and it was a collection of lake myths from Cameroon and across Africa. The second one was social satire. It's called Someplace Somewhere. And unfortunately, what prompted me to write that particular book, which is also a collection of short stories, nothing has changed since I wrote it in 2005. Country is still the same. And so I came up with my last book, which is called 2 Cents for Africa, and it's a play on words. It's my 2 cents contribution to the growth of Africa, and it is also a warning that if we as Africans, we do not change our mindset and we do not do things differently, then we might get up one day and this continent would have been sold or bought by somebody else, and it would have only cost them 2 cents. I knew that 2 cents is like 25 francs. Yeah, and I write everything, including poetry. So I have lots of work in progress.
So how do you manage family work, or family life, rather, with all the other things that you have at hand?
Well, I hope only my kids can tell me if I do well as a mother. But first of all, I finished school before I started having children. So I had the time to bring the children up. Then I was working with the government, and with the government you have a little bit more time. By the time I went to the United Nations and internationally, the children had been formed. So it's easy for me to be able to do that. Then when I come back from work, and writing is something that you do anywhere. On the bus, something can trigger me, and you see me, I'm jotting something in a notepad. At work, wherever I'm sitting, if something just clicks, I write. And so I write poetry, I listen to stories, and I can develop them. and it becomes a novel. So there are some of those in progress.
So, any future projects?
Yeah, well, I'm debating with a younger sister of mine who thinks that I've done all the other things instead of me publishing another book or writing my novel. I should, first of all, publish my poetry first. So I'm still looking at what next.
Okay. So when you are not into working, how do you distract yourself?
Well, I'm one of those people who is never bored. I like to listen to music, I like to dance, I like to cook, and I'm a very good cook. I mean, I'm not bragging about it, but it's true. I like to cook, so I always find something to do. And if I'm not doing that, I'm either watching a movie or writing something. I mean, I keep myself busy and happy.
Yeah. And you just talk of the fact that you lose your husband. How many years after marriage?
Almost 17 years ago.
After 17 years ago.
Yeah.
So let's get into the issue of widowhood in Cameroon and in Africa. So how did it go? What do you think about the situation of widows?
First of all, I want to say that the young girls listening out there, you should not live your life thinking that marriage is an achievement. It's a very beautiful thing. And so when you get married, you have kids, or you don't get married, or you don't have kids, or you have them, when you lose a spouse, it's extremely difficult. And in our cultures where they have some traditions that, hopefully they are fading out, we hope that those traditions don't continue. In my case, I was lucky. My in-laws did not allow me to stay in what they call in Banso Dengai for too long. And for that, I was grateful. And, I thanked the women who did not. It's difficult when you've been married and then you find yourself single, because then you didn't plan on being single. You knew that you were going to get married, you were going to raise your kids together, and then now you have to play double portion, raising the kids, being mother and father to them. And it's usually not easy, but if you put God ahead of everything, then it works. If also, as a woman, you are educated, then you know that you have your education to fall back on. I quit my job to follow my husband to Tanzania, but when he died, I was able to move from where I was to where I am because I'm educated. So yeah, go to school first. Let your education be your first husband. Don't think that getting married is an achievement. And if you lose your husband, it doesn't become a taboo. It's not something you wear on your shoulders to say, I'm a widow. That's not what defines you as a human being. That's not what defines you as a woman. That's not what defines you as a mother. It's just a title. And I mean, as an Anglophone, maybe I get, like when I see, this Madame Veuve Tel. I have not seen any man they're bearing and they say, Monsieur Veuvage, whatever Tel. So why do women have to carry that on their heads? Hell no.
Talking about that, what do you think about the unfriendly practices that widows undergo? Because some opinion will hold that the decisions or the traditional rites are biased because most men don't undertake such rituals. Mm-hmm. So what's your opinion about that?
Well, those rites, who are they done by? By women, on other women. And what happens is when a woman loses her husband, first she's in so much pain that she doesn't need additional pain. And yet, if you were a woman that was not liked by your in-laws, there are some in-laws that would use that opportunity to be a time where they're going to add you more grief. Frankly speaking, a woman doesn't need any more than what she goes through at that particular time. So we women, who are the people who propagate those rights, should end it. Because if it's not you today, it's going to be someone else tomorrow. So remember that as you are doing to somebody else's daughter today, they might do it to you tomorrow or to your daughter. But end of story, let those traditional practices stop.
And what can you tell, we are almost going out of time, maybe we have just few minutes. What advice can you give to the younger generation and the women who are watching us right now?
Well, to the women who are watching us right now, I just want to tell them to be themselves. The journey we call life, I actually wrote a poem last week about it. The journey we call life is unique. It can never be duplicated. You can never live anyone else's life for them, and neither can somebody else live your life. So if you are a Christian or whatever religion you follow, find out what the purpose of your life is. Find out what your passion is and follow it. That is all that there is to life, and live life with the moral rectitude that you were brought up to live, so that at the end of the day, you would have done the best that you could. We will all have challenges, we will all make mistakes, but when you do them in good faith and you move on, you would be proud of yourself. You would say, hey, I did the best that I can. This journey, I could only have taken it alone. And it is my journey. It is no one else's journey. Nobody else's opinion counts. Just yours. And be yourself. If you're true to yourself, anything else is a side dish, and anything else is a distraction. Okay. That's what I would like to tell you.
Yes, you said you had a poem, a short poem for our viewers. Can you share your poem with us?
No, that's okay. Let me read this one that I read. This journey. I didn't choose it. I came to be. I had to make the journey. There was no plan, or if there was, I didn't know it. I had to find the path with the first steps. I stumbled and fell, got up and stumbled, and fell again and again until I could walk on my own. The destination was certain from the beginning, but the path was never so. I had to find it or make one. When I thought I knew the path or understood the destination, there were challenges, roadblocks, mountains, hills, valleys, deserts, tears, laughter, sorrow, happiness, sadness, you name it. I passed through all. In some parts, I had people who stretched out helping hands, but for most of it, I had to walk it alone. You want to know how the journey has been like? How can I begin to tell you? How do I explain the things only I could feel? How do I explain those moments I was totally alone in a crowd? How do I explain the sharp pain of hurt, the treachery from loved ones? How do I explain the many times I lost my way, even when others thought I was okay? How do I explain the tears that could only be shared internally? How do I tell you of the fears and the dreams that never came true? How do I express the shame of disappointment or the elation of simple pleasures? This journey I didn't choose. It came to be, and I had to do the best of it. If you only knew. But how can you know? This journey we all must take, but none can walk the other's journey. My journey then could only be done by me. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Mrs. Beatrice Fri Bime. We thank you so much for coming into our studios and talking to us about the fight against corruption and telling us how we could have maybe a less corrupt society. And I hope our televiewers learned so much from that. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you too.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, that was it for today's edition. Today, focus on the show was on women's contribution in the fight against corruption. We do hope you learned something. Do join us again 2 Saturdays from now. Until then, stay blessed.
Vision 4, où que vous soyez, c'est une réalité. Sur vos smartphones et vos téléphones Android, téléchargez désormais l'application Vision 4. Vous pourrez à partir de votre téléphone portable suivre en direct les programmes de votre télévision.